Hey, Rise and Thrivers. I'm your host, John Merkus, but I suspect you already knew that. And today we're going to explore one of the most challenging yet transformative experiences we all face: waiting. My guest is the author of a powerful new book, The Weight of the Wait: God's Unexpected Purpose for Life's Hardest Seasons. After a 27-year career in IT, Sam's life took a turn when he spent over a decade supporting his wife, Crystal, through a 10-year battle with cancer and later faced his own long season of unemployment. Through those deeply human experiences, Sam discovered that the weight we feel in waiting can actually reveal one of life's greatest purposes. He's a pastor, a teacher, a chaplain for young adults at the Faith Bible Church in the Woodlands, Texas, where they affectionately call him Uncle Sam. Today, he's sharing wisdom born from pain, patience, and a powerful faith. Rise and Thrivers, welcome Sam Wegner to the show.
Thank you, John. That's a wonderful introduction. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm really intrigued with the. Let's dive straight into the book, and we'll get to know you as we go through this conversation. But The Weight of the Wait, it's such an interesting title. Can you tell us about the conversation that inspired the title?
Yeah. We were about a year or so into my wife's metastatic diagnosis. She'd had cancer for about 6 years at that point. We're coming out of COVID, and there were some friends who were visiting from out of town, missionaries actually. And so the leader of our small group at church was hosting a party at his place and invited a whole bunch of people to come. My wife had a particular connection with this couple because their son has special needs and was a student of hers in the special needs ministry at our church. And so they had quite the bond, and they were both looking forward to seeing one another. However, because of her condition, we typically had to be very careful about, her forays into public, and so we hadn't made a big deal of whether or not she was going to be there. So when she showed up, it kind of added to the party atmosphere because everybody was excited to see her. And at a certain point, I stepped away from the crowd to kind of catch my breath for a minute. And a friend came up to me. His name is Greg. And he wanted to know how we were doing. And so I started giving him some of the, my standard answers about, the medical situation and this, that, and the other thing. And he kind of leaned in and he said, yeah, that's great. He says, but how are you dealing with the weight? And I was like, what? I'd been asked how I was doing before, but nobody had ever quite put it to me that way before.
Yep.
And so I asked him to repeat it. And he goes, how are you dealing with the weight? And then almost instinctively, without really processing what I was about to say, I just kind of blurted out, the heaviest part of the weight is the weight. And he understood that I was talking about dealing with the fact that, she was going to die from this disease, and we just didn't know when.
Wow.
And as I had struggled with that concept, I thought I was just dealing with anticipatory grief, which to some extent I was. And I told people, this wouldn't be so bad if I could just do it and get it over with, right? You kind of bank it for the future. So if I do all my grieving now, then I don't have to wait and do it later when the real thing happens, and I can be strong for everybody and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it doesn't work like that. And I knew that, but that was kind of what my mindset was. But even in that statement, it kind of reveals what my real underlying issue was. And that was not so much that my wife was going to die. We're very strong in our faith. I was very confident about uh, where she's going to go, where I'm going to go, and all the wonderful things that await us in heaven. Uh, my hang up was with how long it was taking to get there. And so, we kind of scoff at Ebenezer Scrooge in Dickens' Christmas Carol when the two gentlemen come in and want, you know, alms for the poor. And, you know, he says, let them go to debtor's prison if they can't afford to live. And one guy says, well, some would rather die than go to a debtor's prison. And Scrooge says, well, if they'd rather die, they better do so and decrease the surplus population. And it's really an awful thing to say. It's a particularly awful thing to say about your wife. And it's even, so I didn't really come and say that out loud, but I felt it. And that was really a big part of what was weighing me down. So after that, I began learning some lessons by looking into the Bible, and saw some patterns of things that kind of helped me sort through all of that. And as I started sharing them with my friends and in my small group, they encouraged me to write it down, and that became the weight of the weight.
Yeah, right. I see. So that's dealing with quite a few things there, Sam, in terms of what you've got to deal with, and I can really hear, and I've read in the research that it was or is your faith that keeps you strong.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, here in Australia, we're not as let's say connected with religion as you might be in the US, and that's okay. I really wanted to have you on the show because your story is so honest and true and transparent. So it must have taken so much courage, not only to have that conversation with Greg, but to write the book and be so transparent about your emotions to share with the world.
I guess I never really thought about that aspect of it so much, because the more that I got into it, and the principles that I learned, and as I started to apply them, the encouragement that I got from it was so great that I recognized that everybody's waiting on something. Everybody's walking around, with a big burden. You can't, you can't swing a dead cat in a subway or train station without hitting a dozen people that are just in over their heads for with whatever, right? It doesn't, in my case, it was cancer, and the fact that, although not at the time that Greg spoke to me, but a couple of years later, losing my job. But everybody's dealing with something. It could be related to a family issue. It could be a medical problem. It could be a work situation. It could be a long-standing issue with a friend. Just any number of different things that can come up out of it, and that's where I saw that it was pretty universally applicable. Right, one of the first principles that I saw was that hope and waiting go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Yep.
And
I'm glad you
and so
mentioned that because I wanted to talk about hope because
yeah.
some people, as I think I've heard you say, some confuse hope with wishful thinking.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And
is this one of
and
the things you learned on that journey?
yeah, it is. Um that kind of helps me um to be transparent about it, because um when I open up about what's going on in my life and my heart and my mind, people connect with it, and all of a sudden you start to have conversations that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Mm.
And if I have found hope, then I want to share it. I want to let other people know it. I don't want to just sit on it and hoard it, because hope was meant to be shared. So yeah. Pardon me, I forgot where exactly you were going with your last statement. We can pick up on that again.
Yeah, that's okay. I got excited as well and wanted to talk about hope because that the difference between hope and wishful
Oh,
thinking.
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't really, um, I really didn't understand hope as well as I thought I did
Mm-hmm.
until I really started um, reading and studying and thinking about it. And I realized that there are some very false ideas out there about hope. And what I recognized is that um, I had kind of bought into all of them, more or less, right? For some people, hope is about it's wishful thinking. Um, it might be nice, if this could go well for me, but that's really all that it is. Then there are some people that are just about, hope is just toughing it out, just
Yep.
making it through to the next day.
Yep.
Some people see hope as, um, a kind of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You know, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, start all over again. You can be a little ant, but you can tackle that rubber tree plant, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, and then there are, um, there are people that just say, hope is just about being positive. You got to think good thoughts. You just got to have a positive outlook on life, and that will help things rosy up. You know, um, and then you get the scientific bent who look at hope and they say, well, um, and actually the predominant school of thought in psychology these days is that hope is just simply figuring out different ways to get around the obstacles in your life, and so you can achieve your objectives. And I was um, I was looking at all of that, and you could apply it to my wife's cancer, and wishing that she didn't have it wasn't going to make it go away,
No.
right? Um, Even if we tough through a long night, and trust me, we have endured many a long, desperate night. You wake up in the morning, cancer's still there, right? I can only pick myself up off the carpet so many times. It's a relentless disease.
Mm.
It certainly never gives up.
Mm.
And just, um, and while staying positive is a part of that, if you don't have a real foundation, a reason to be positive,
Yep.
it will wear you down. And there's no, uh, I mean, this is a stage 4 diagnosis. There's there is no cure. There's only one way that this ends,
Mm.
right? And it doesn't matter how many plans I make, how much money I have in the bank, how many resources I can throw at it. Um, it's still going to end up the same way. So,
Yeah.
how does that? How do any of those things change my life? They can't. There has to be something else. There has to be something more. Um, I do believe that hope is positively transformational, but it has to be based on the right thing. Otherwise, it's not even worth a penny tossed in a wishing well.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I notice in your resources on your website, so Rise and Thrivers, head to samwegner.com. That's where you can pick up his book. And also, there's a couple of free resources there. And one is the waiting wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice with hope, it says plus action. And we often talk on the show that action does make the difference. And so I was really interested to talk to you about the waiting wheel and that hope plus action part specifically as we're talking about hope. Can you
Mm-hmm.
tell us more about that?
Yeah, so the waiting wheel is a graphical representation of a series of principles that I combined from several passages in the Bible. The three big ones are Romans 8, James 1, and Romans 5. And when we put all these things together, we understand some concepts that explain how this whole growth process is supposed to work. Um, I talked about having about your hope being based on something real, something substantial. Um, I believe that uh, that thing is God, and I explain how and why and all that pretty extensively in the book. But there is a um, uh, but hope is a component of faith. From a verse in Hebrews 11, it says that faith is the substance of things that are hoped for. So you start with hope, and when you act on that hope, when you um, produce evidence of the hope, or you do something on the basis of hope, that's what faith is. And um, it's a it's a very simple and not difficult to understand uh, principle, and we exercise it every single day. You know, when you sat down in the chair that you're sitting in today, um, you had hope, you had confidence that the chair was going to hold you up, right?
Yep. Yep.
And but that hope was realized. It was made concrete when you actually sat in it, and that's faith, pure
Yep.
and simple.
Yep.
Um, and and that becomes um, the foundation of you know how we approach those approach difficult situations, because then faith is tested, right? Um, you are going to go through things that are going to uh, put strain on whether or not the thing that you hoped in and put faith in is actually going to hold you up and
Yep.
sustain you through the pressure treatment. And we understand this in all the different aspects of our world. Um, uh, we put mechanical devices and software through stress testing to make sure that they don't break under the most severe of circumstances. You never know until you press something to the limit, right? And then once something has been, fire tested like that, then we know whether it's going to endure or persevere is the word that's used in the Bible. And then the then the Apostle James tells us that when we come out on the other side of that perseverance, that builds character in us, specifically God's character in us, and then that becomes the basis for going around that cycle again. So you can say that you have hope in pretty much anything you want to, and you can talk about hope uh, all you want. And you can define it any way you want. You can say, this is what I believe, and so on and so forth. But it's when your feet are put to the fire, when you're put in that desperate situation, what do? What or who are you relying on? How do you react? How do you approach that situation? What do you think about it? How do you treat others while you're in the middle of your situation? And how do you treat others when they're in the middle of theirs? Right? And those actions reveal exactly where your hope is placed, what you have faith in, and whether it's going to stand up to the test or not.
Yeah, right. And you've quoted some Bible passages there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would expect that from a pastor and a chaplain.
Occupational hazard.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Now, half of the listeners of Rise and Thrive are from the States, and there's reasons for that. We'll go into that later. And hello, if you're listening from the United States of America. We've got listeners all over the world, and a good portion of them are Australian. And I just wanted to touch on this with you because I find this really interesting. I want to talk about the Bible with you.
Okay.
Because there's skepticism over the book itself, how it was written, how it was formed, what bits were in, what bits were out, things like that. Some passages might be outdated, some might not be relevant anymore. But I essentially believe personally that there's gold in there, and that can really help people as it's helped you, as you quote those wonderful, because words create your world, right? And there's a myriad of amazing passages and words in that book, let's say, that are transformational, that can help, and that can spark ideas and all the rest of it. So personally, I like to focus on that part of what the Bible can give you, because it can give you hope, strengthen your faith, get you through those tough times. But I just wanted to mention that because there'll be listeners listening to this, and I don't know if it's the same in the States. There'll be listeners listening to this, and as soon as you quote the Bible, they'll go, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
and I don't think that's fair if you haven't looked at it properly to see. Well, it's like a lot of things. All of it might not be for you, but there might be some areas in it and some stories or some lessons that are actually fantastic.
Well, so, I understand that, and I very briefly addressed that at one point, because I make no mistake. My story, the solutions that I have found, the transformation that I've experienced, it's all directly tied to my faith, and that is grounded in the fact that I believe that the Bible is true and that the God of the Bible is real. I recognize that not everybody holds that opinion, and it's really wasn't the point of that book to try to convince you differently. So if that is something that causes you to uh, skip to the next episode of this podcast, or to not pick up the book. I get it. I understand. But here's the thing. The whole purpose of me writing the book, and for being as transparent as I am about it, is because the effect that it's had on my life is very, very real.
Gotcha.
I'm not looking to, I'm not necessarily looking for any pity or sympathy or anything like that. But this is part of the reality of my story. That I lost my job 18 months ago. Been working hard at trying to find another one. Haven't been able to. Here in the United States, if you've been laid off, you're eligible to maintain your health insurance for 18 months after you're terminated. And for me, that ends quite literally tomorrow, last day of the month. And the savings that we've been living off of for this entire time, it's dwindling. It's dwindling fast. And if I have to pick up additional expenses because I need to take care of my wife, it's going to drain even faster. So that's a desperate situation.
Yeah.
And last week, I felt it, and I was acting like it was a desperate situation. And but rehearsing the truths of that I believe in, and going back and working through the principles that are outlined in that waiting wheel that you talked about. It brought peace and confidence. And I don't, at the end of my little episode there, I wasn't any more employed or any richer or any better insured than I was 5 minutes before.
Yeah.
But I'm not a basket case.
Yeah. I really like it. Go on.
And I think, and so I would just simply say to those who might be a little skeptical, don't necessarily read it as a religious book or as a God book. Read it as a Sam book. This is my story. Just hear me out. I don't necessarily ask you to believe and to fall in line with the way I think. What I am telling you is what worked for me and what was true for me. And the only question I would ask you is, when you're dealing with the really difficult things in your life, how is your system working for you? And if you're picking up a book called The Weight of the Weight, my guess is that you're feeling it. My guess is that you're struggling with it, and that your approach is lacking something. And I don't want to show you up. I don't want to make you feel bad about that. I hope that I'm giving you a better answer that'll work for you. And that's why I talk about it.
I love the way you put it, Sam, and that the book is really showing what worked for you and how you get through those hard times that you've had and that you're still going through. And so it's not a case of you trying to convert anyone. It's just you showing what works and what is continuing to work for you, and what you can draw and gain, and how that influences your life in a positive way. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And the example of, you control what you can control, which is the way you think about your circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
and that the Bible has helped you do that very much so. So
It has. Very much so.
Yeah, I'm glad we were able to speak about that and make that clear about what your book is, and also what it's not. If we were standing around having a cup of tea or coffee, and you told me that you'd written a book, and I asked you, "Oh, great! Who's it for? Who you pitching it to?" What would you say?
Well, I would say that it's really oriented towards anybody who has difficulty with waiting, because that's really what it is, and or people feeling that they've lost hope. Really, hope and waiting go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other. Because if you're hoping for something, it's because it's not here yet, and if it's not here yet, then you have to wait for it. So it's really the two things that kind of go together. That's one of the big launching points for me in trying to put this whole thing together. And so whoever's dealing with something hard, whoever is having to wait for whatever, it could be any number of things. I have talked to people who have found relevance for it in terms of, obviously, chronic disease. I mean, that's a no-brainer. Joblessness, obviously, is another direct link, but that's just because those were the elements of my story. I've had other people talk to me about it, helping them deal with caring for aging parents, particularly those who have memory issues, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue these days as people are living longer. It's been shared with people who are dealing with miscarriage, infertility, special needs children, adult special needs children, which have their own issues. There was one lady who said it was helping her deal with how she was relating to a sister who is a chronic alcoholic, and not just people who are going through chronic illness, but those who have to care for those who are dealing with chronic illnesses.
Thanks for joining us on Rise and Thrive, Conversations for Greatness with John Merkus. Remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you do matter. Embrace the journey of personal growth and motivation. Let's go out there and do something great. Follow or subscribe for more insights and inspiration every Tuesday. Until next time, stay awesome.